Often charities are involved in a process that is called split receipting. In this case, a donor receives some advantage for the donation that they have given to the charity. When that occurs, then there needs to be another process that takes into consideration that advantage and really subtracts it from the value of the donation to get what we call the eligible amount of the gift. And this is the amount that can actually be receipted. So there are a couple of examples on this screen. The first example is a donation of $100. The particular donor receives $15 in advantages. Let's say they received a t-shirt or a mug or something like that, and then they are allowed to get an $85 receipt. Now, the second example here is where someone gives $100, they receive $9 in advantage, and they still get a $100 receipt. So there are some different little rules that come into play. But the basic concept is that whatever you give, you need to take off the value of the advantage, and then that's the eligible amount of your receipt. However, there are two kinds of advantages. There are advantages that are basically linked to the object of the fundraising activity. These are items or services that are integral to the fundraising activity. So for example, if I'm running a gala, then the meal is critical. I can't really run a gala without a meal. Or if I'm running a golf tournament, then I've got the golf cart, I've got the golf fees for playing, and I've got the meal. These are all advantages that have to be calculated into the advantage. And they need to be assessed at their fair market value as part of that calculation. But there's other items that are called complementary items. These items are subject to what is called the de minimis threshold. These items aren't critical. So for example, if I go to a golf tournament, then I receive a little giveaway as I come in, or there's prizes that are given to me for winning or things like that. I really don't need to have these items as part of the event. So these are kind of complementary. These items are subject to this de minimis threshold, which basically says I have up to 10% of the cost of the donation, or up to $75 that I can provide to the attendee without counting those items. So if we now go back to the first example, we can see example A, where this person received an advantage of $15, which is really 15%. Therefore, it has to be subtracted. But in example B, they only received $9, which is only 9%. So that's below the de minimis threshold of 10%. Therefore, I don't need to count it because these are complementary items. And therefore, this person would get the full benefit of the $100 donation that they would have received. Now, another critical factor to consider is this donation eligible in terms of meeting what is called the donative intent threshold? Basically, what the donative intent is that a person can't receive more than 80% advantage for the donation that they provided. So if I've given $100 donation, then I can't receive advantages that total more than $80. Otherwise, I haven't really met the threshold for donative intent. For example, on the bottom, a donor gives a gift of $40. They receive $35 in advantage. When you look at that, the threshold of 80% is $32. So I actually received $3 more in advantage. Therefore, I'm not permitted to get a receipt because I received too much advantage and didn't reach the threshold for donative intent. This is a flow chart that we've developed on our resources that kind of reference that. You can see there's advantage A, which is really the advantages linked to the objects of the fundraiser. Advantage B, which are called complementary items. It takes you back into the formula, which also leads you to something called is there donative intent? And if there is, then you move down to giving a receipt. If there isn't, then there's no receipt that is provided. Now, putting this all together, we have an example of a golf tournament. In this tournament, there's 100 participants, each one paying $200. So there's a green fee of $50, there's a cart rental of $20, food and beverage of $30, there's tea gifts that someone gets when they come in of $15. If they take all the door prizes, then the fair market value of all those door prizes is $2,000. There's a hole-in-one prize, $10,000 if you happen to get it, and they also have a lottery or a raffle that they run during the event. So the question is, what is the eligible amount of this receipt, and was there donative intent? So if you look at these numbers, then they can be broken down into two parts. If we look at Advantage A, or the Advantage A type, these are the items that are connected to the actual event. So the green fee, the cart fee, the food and beverage, they need to be there for the event to run. So they add up to $100. They need to be included in the calculation. Now if you look at Advantage B, these are complementary items. So the tea gifts of $15 need to be included. The fair market value of the door prizes, while there was $2,000 of door prizes, there's 100 participants, so basically it's $20 per participant. The hole-in-one prize doesn't count as an advantage because there's like 1 in 40,000 chance of winning, so it's not really counted. The raffle prizes are not an advantage, or the raffle tickets, because you're charging for that, so it's not really part of the event. So when you add all of those complementary items, it's $35. Now this does exceed the 10%. Therefore, it exceeds the de minimis threshold and must be included. So when we add up the eligible amount of the receipt, we have the $200, and then we take off the 100 and then also the 35, so we end up with an eligible receipt of $65. Is that reaching donative intent? Yes, because if you take that ratio of 135 over 200, then it's only 67%, basically. So that is under the 80%. So in fact, they can be receipted for $65 because there is donative intent under the 80% guidelines. When you're receipting this, then you need to have all of these components. So you'll notice this receipt looks a little differently than the one that was just a cash receipt before. On here, in the middle, you need to have the total amount of the donation. You also need to have the value of the advantage. So you have to put in the, for example, the $135 advantage, and then you have the eligible amount of the receipt. If there's any appraisal that needs to occur, then you've got who appraised it, and then all the other information that is expected on these receipts by Revenue Canada. We have some resources to help you with that. We have the decision tree, which is the whole flow chart. You've seen parts of that here to kind of look at moving your way through as to whether something should be receipted or not. We have a receipting handbook that really looks at all kinds of frequently asked questions about, for example, what do you do with a spoiled receipt, or things like that. We have guidelines for split receipting. This is a great resource because it looks at all kinds of scenarios like a silent auction or a gala or a concert, how to receipt these things. And then CRA website has some excellent resources and checklists around receipting practice.